Hey y'all, I'm Shauna. Welcome in to the channel and to another day of Vlogmas. Today's video is really special and something I haven't done on the channel before. I'm going to be sharing my story. Back in 2020, I found my spending habits to be in a place where I just couldn't continue anymore. They got to a point, or I should say a breaking point, where I felt like going on a no-buy was something that I had to do. And I joined YouTube in 2020 to kind of document that story or that progress. In this video, I'm going to be really honest about how things got to where they were, how I got to that place where I just couldn't continue doing what I was doing. But this video is going to go beyond that. I'm going to talk about how I actually changed my habits and reflect on that process of what worked and what didn't, because it really has been a process over the past 4 years. This video is intended for people who are either thinking about changing their shopping habits or in the midst of changing their shopping habits. Maybe you've kind of come to your own last straw breaking point moment. You're like, I don't know what to do. I hope that this video provides you some inspiration and some comfort and really just makes you feel like you're not alone. Because I remember that feeling very vividly in end of 2019. I felt really embarrassed about how things were. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what the first step should be. I felt overwhelmed and ashamed. And I hope that this video makes you feel less alone, makes you feel less of those things, and provides you inspiration to kickstart your journey, however that looks. So let's get started. We're going to have to do a little backstory for some context. So I got my first job when I was 14, which I actually looked up recently is still the legal minimum working age in Ontario. And I agree to what I said back in 2020 that I've just kind of always been bad with money. I started spending basically all of my money from paycheck number one at age 14. So when I talk about habits, I started shopping the way that I shopped from age 14. University is where my spending really started to get out of hand. And there was two main factors for that. One, going out all of the time. And two, I just started online shopping like crazy. I wasn't really thinking about the future and saving all that much. And when I was thinking about savings, it was basically just saving money for school purposes. I got my own credit card. I think my limit was $1,000 or something like that. But now I could basically spend money I didn't have. So much of my money went down the toilet in the name of drinking, and drinking can be a real money suck. Not only do you have the alcohol itself, but also you have all of the adjacent stuff. You have the transit or the cab rides to and from wherever you're going. You have fees if you're going to a place with fees. Then if you're, let's say, going to a bar, then you are drinking at the place, or club to drinking at the place. Bars have food. Then you start ordering food. And then when you're drinking, your inhibitions are lower, your judgment is lower. So you don't really care that you're spending more money buying clothes to go out, or buying shoes, outfits, makeup to go out. It can be very expensive. I was at the time probably spending $500 a month minimum on drinking and drinking related. I worked 3 jobs through the entirety of university. I worked 2 during the regular year, your 8 months of school, and then I worked 1 in the summer. I was working all the time, as well as it's really surprising for me to look back and remember this time at how hard I was working, how much I was working, to just throw that money away on drinking and clothes. But one of the ways I justified going out as much as I did was making memories and going out with my friends and having experiences. That is the exact rhetoric that I use today, and many people use today, to justify spending money on, experiences, and experiences being better than tangible stuff. This video is kind of really a reminder to me that you can absolutely overspend on experiences as much as stuff. I no longer qualify going out drinking as like an experience that is worth the money to me. And 2014 was the year that my spending like really exploded. I found two things happened that year. I found beauty YouTube, and my makeup bag at the time, or before I found beauty YouTube, was like one single makeup bag. It was like, I don't know, medium-sized makeup bag. I don't know exactly how to qualify that. Medium-sized makeup bag had about 30 products in there. I think less, but like including brushes and stuff, probably around 30. I had one product per category. So I had one blush, one foundation. I don't know if I used primer at the time either. Probably had like 2 lipsticks though. Discovered YouTube, and those 30 products went from 30 to roughly 200 in 365 days. I was doing that on top of all the other things I was spending money on. And I remember like so vividly all of the boxes coming in, like ordering them to the dorm. I bought this backpack from Victoria's Secret, I think. It was like $80 at the time. And I was like, oh my God, it's so cute, cutest thing I've ever seen. I bought lots of Morphe palettes at the time, the 35O, the 35T. I remember like doing my makeup in my 3rd year dorm. I bought a lot of drugstore lip products. I ordered a lot from Forever 21, like all the time from Forever 21. Like, and it was cheap and I could just buy a lot of stuff. And then I bought a lot of dresses and like formals at that time too. Formals were a really big excuse for me to spend tons of money. They were in my mind like I could justify them because they were an experience, and I would buy a new dress, I'd buy new shoes, I'd buy new makeup, I would buy like new jewelry, and they were these whole things. The second thing that happened in 2014 was that it was like a very terrible year personally. That was the year that I solidified both drinking and shopping as coping mechanisms. It wasn't until maybe like 2022 that I really started to see where my coping mechanisms came from and like kind of where they like cemented themselves. I think there's a chance that I was doing these things before, but that was the year that these things really cemented themselves together. I often did these things together. I would like drink alone in my room, and I would also drink and shop. And one of the reasons why this I feel like worked was that I just like felt terrible all the time. And the way to feel better was with buying stuff. Not only was it a distraction from the problem, but it made me feel good for a little while. And I was like doing it all the time. I made a lot of bad choices at that time. And I remember very vividly, and I don't think I've ever shared this story before, but I was like, I needed a pick me up. Like bad day, needed a pick me up. And the closest place to buy makeup was a Shoppers Drug Mart across from my school. And I went to that Shoppers and I said, I left all of my makeup. I think I said it was like on the train or a friend's house, something like that. It's like, I need to replace everything. And I did. I bought new brushes, new makeup in every category, walked out. It was a $400 and something purchase. I still actually own some of those makeup brushes to this day. I was just like so desperate to buy stuff that like I made up this whole story to like feel less guilty about buying new makeup. And there was also a moment in 2014 that like should have been a wake up call, but it wasn't. And going back, I realized I was like choosing to be oblivious to what was going on around me. I went to Cuba with my brother. Fabulous trip, amazing trip. But I went with $300 in cash in my pocket. That was all the money I had. And if anything happened on that trip, anything, I wouldn't have had the money to pay for. And by anything, I mean like, what if I got lost? What if I got hurt? Like those are two very real circumstances that could have happened just like based on the trip. Now looking back, very lucky I didn't get hurt. Very lucky I didn't get lost. I wouldn't have had the money to do anything. And the reason why I was put in that position was through my own choices. Between 2014 and 2016, I started like drinking less. And as that happened, I started shopping more. As I see one kind of go down and one go up, I'm also just like really reminded of how unhappy I was at the time and how good shopping made me feel. And I think one of the reasons why it became such a good alternative is because drinking can make you really sad, and drinking can like you can feel the feels when you're drinking, whereas that's not the case with shopping. So it was like I got rid of all the negative consequences of one thing, and I was able to feel really good with shopping. And I was unhappy at the time, so being in a position where I felt my feeling wasn't what I wanted to do, and shopping made me feel better, it became a more attractive option. And I stopped drinking almost completely around the end of 2016, beginning of 2017. At that point, shopping just like continued to go up, and I also finished paying off school at that time, so all of my money was mine. If 2014 was like a really big spike, 2017 was another like really big spike for both of those reasons. Between 2017 and 2019, my shopping habits reached new levels of insanity. I was spending so much money and I was saving near zero. I wasn't making very much money at the time. I was spending like $5,000 a year on clothes easy, probably more. I was spending another $3,000-$4,000 on makeup. And to me, that's kind of insanity when you're making $30,000. And Black Friday 2019 was my last straw moment. I spent that year, my credit card bill, I'll never forget. It was $3,500. It bothered me that I was shocked that I didn't know that I had spent that much money. Like, to spend that much money and not realize it, you have to be willfully ignorant. I ordered so much stuff and I was always obsessed with tracking it and also making sure I picked it up before my parents got home, like getting it from the mailbox before they had a chance to, or if stuff was like on the porch, bringing it in, putting it in my closet, making sure nobody knew that I was buying that much. I was hiding my purchases, how much I was buying, which like that alone is a red flag. I remember this moment very vividly. Over the course of the week, I was getting like 3-4 packages a day. End of the week comes, I have like 20 packages and I'm like swimming with stuff. And I was so excited all week to get this stuff. And literally from one day to the next, I went from excitement to overwhelm. Oh my God, I have so much stuff. And I got that credit card bill and I went, like, what have I done? In that moment, I'm like sitting in my room with all of this stuff that I bought, this incredibly expensive credit card bill, looking at my bank statement, being like, how is this my life? Like, how have I spent this much money? And I had been in school for so long at that point, like, since 2012, this point is like 2019. I still felt like I was like a 19-year-old and I was like 20 or 19 or 20. At the time, I went on my noby, I was 25 and still young, but I was starting to like think about my future. I had been with my partner for several years at that point, and I'm thinking about our future, like wanting to get married and get a house together, eventually. And like, how can I do that? How can I have any hope of doing that if I'm flushing my money away? It really hit me that I was sacrificing my future. And I also I hadn't been planning at all for the future. I was very much in the moment. In that moment, things felt very gross because it felt like I was picking stuff over my future, stuff over my partner, stuff over me, and stuff over my happiness. And I didn't want to be that way. And I realized in my head, I can have all of these goals of owning a home as an example, or getting married. You can think about that all you want, but they're just thoughts unless you do something about it. And I wasn't doing anything about it. Black Friday 2019 was really the last straw moment where I said, I can't do this anymore. I can't spend this way. I cannot shop away my entire salary. So all of this spending away my future, spending beyond my means, led me to go on a no-buy in 2020. And I went on a no-buy in 2020 with the best of intentions, but I was quite naive, to be honest. And I didn't have an accurate reflection of the problem. I think as well, I didn't see any alternatives. At the time, like, I know 2020 is only 4 years ago, but I feel like you have to think about the context of the time. There wasn't a ton of content on nobuys, on like countering your shopping habits and changing them. That is far more popular now than it was in 2019 when I was like researching for this, which is 5 years ago now. There wasn't the kind of content and the quantity of the content at the time as there is now, or at least even awareness of these things. I went on a noby because I saw that as the option that was available. So other people were doing, and I heard what they were saying about like what their problems were and like what their solutions were. And in my opinion, those like early videos, that early genre of no-buy content never really delved deep into the heart of the problem, which shopping habits, number one, and number two, I think my case specifically, shopping as a coping mechanism. I still see, I was actually watching a no-buy video the day before I filmed this, and this person was talking about like they haven't been on a no-buy yet, they're just going on, and they were talking about how people in their comments are saying like, oh, they can't do it, and they're like, yes you can, like you can say no. And I still feel like a lot of folks who go on a no-buy now to this day who haven't been on one before, I think that they're in for a bit of a surprise about like how deep rooted shopping habits are, our behaviors are. And there's a good chance if you find a no-buy necessary, shopping is a coping mechanism for you. Unless you address the root of your problem, you're not just your triggers, but where your shopping habits come from, you're gonna have a really hard time not shopping or changing how you shop. I don't blame younger Shauna for being naive or like not knowing the full extent of the problem. You don't know what you don't know. And I learned and I iterated, which I feel like is the most that you can really ask yourself. My no-buy did expose to me that there were some kind of like surface level problems that could be addressed fairly quickly. And by surface level, I'm talking about things that are just like easier to address than deep rooted problems. Things like learning to say no, learning some financial basics, learning about impulse shopping and FOMO, learning about my triggers. And, you know, you can't buy everything you want just because you want it. And there was some impulsivity there. There was just some, you're not used to saying no, that was present. Learning to say no was helpful. Unsubscribing from newsletters, helpful. Monitoring or changing, tweaking what you consume content wise is helpful, but it's only going to go so far if you don't address your habits, or all that will only do so much if you don't address your habits. Most of us are capable of thinking critically about a purchase, whether it's a good one or not, or coming up with criteria to determine that. We've just developed habits that help us avoid that, because thinking critically about purchases means that we get to doubt ourselves, or we get to say no, and we don't get to indulge in the behavior that we really want to. So if we don't think critically, then we don't have an opportunity to say no. We just need to get in the practice of doing it. This is, I feel like, an unpopular opinion, but this is my experience. My no-buy was like a factory reset. It was really helpful in helping with many of the basics, but I was really invested in the idea of my no-buy solving all my problems. I really wanted that to be the case. I really wanted it to be true. I wanted to have come out the other side to be like, I'm better. I'm fixed. Shopping habits are great. I was so invested in that idea that I was just like done, all happy, good, ready to like be a conscious consumer now. And I wanted to believe that because the alternative was that I basically forced myself to do something that wasn't ultimately good or effective. And it would be like the equivalent of wasting a year / like doing something harder than is necessary. it might be a bit harsh to say that like my no-buy was a waste of a year. That's not true. Saving money, learning not to spend money is not a waste of time, but it was not the right approach for me because I came out a year later and only the surface level stuff was addressed. Important, but surface level. I feel pretty confident now with hindsight that had I not been on YouTube to have some semblance of accountability, I probably would have gone back to shopping the way that I was before. Maybe not to the extent, but I don't think my shopping habits would have gone the way that they did. I'm just like really glad that I was on YouTube. Maybe I'm not giving myself enough credit, but how things did play out was I became really alarmed seeing me want to shop the way that I was before and also struggling with like shopping as a coping mechanism. And I wanted to like, I didn't understand why are things not better? And like, why did that happen to everybody else but not me? I think I was assuming a lot that other people just like they were fixed. I've seen some people who have done no buys around the time that I did before and after. Some of them have slid back into their same old shopping habits, others haven't. And it's really not the case that like everybody's fixed after a no buy. So it was around this time that I was really invested in figuring out why didn't things stick? How do I make them stick? That's how this whole habit conversation came about, and also contentment. And it seems like obvious to me in hindsight that how we shop is a habit or many habits. Contentment plays a role in why and how we shop and like our personal happiness and satisfaction with ourselves and our lives. In 2020, what it really revealed to me was that I was unhappy in many facets of my life. The pandemic helped to kind of push about things that I was already feeling. I was going to shopping to feel better and to, get that dopamine hit. And with shopping no longer serving that purpose, all the stuff that I was avoiding, all of the like unhappiness that was in my life, it came about and I got to see it for what it was. And I was faced with the unhappiness and the choices and all of that. And that's exactly why the contentment piece, like, that's where that piece of the puzzle, I feel like, really kind of started to fit together. I was able to start appreciating my life, appreciating my stuff, and it made not shopping way easier, like way easier. And it also like gave me the courage to make the choices that I wanted to make. The TLDR is that I was so committed to investigating where there is contentment and where there isn't, and figuring out how to cultivate that in every area of my life, be it stuff or personhood. And it also made it really clear to me why no buys don't work for so many people. Deciding to go on a year-long no buy, in my opinion, is basically like deciding you know what the solution is before you truly know the extent of like what your problems are. Sure, over shopping, over consuming is a problem, but do you really know why you do that? Do you really know what your triggers are? Do you truly know where those choices are coming from? And if you haven't addressed your shopping habits before, or you haven't truly sat down to look them in the face, then I think that you're probably missing some part of the puzzle because you don't have experience changing your habits and facing them and confronting them. You gain that experience by doing that. You can have some hypotheses and you're probably going to be right about some things, but I feel very strongly that you're going to have things crop up that surprise you. The emotional component, the coping mechanism component is probably going to show up at some point as well. And so by the time you're starting to think about, okay, here's why I'm shopping, here are my triggers, etc., etc., By the time you're starting to learn this about yourself, you've already committed to the no-buy solution, which is also assuming a certain kind of problem. Or it's kind of like treating a symptom instead of the problem. Shopping isn't the root of the problem. Shopping is the result of the problem, or the symptom, as I was saying. The root of your problem and mine are our habits. If you want to change how you shop permanently, you have to address the habit. And I talk about contentment a lot too, because contentment just makes the addressing the habits, it just makes it easier. You're not going to solve everything with contentment, but it just makes the whole thing easier. It also will make going on a no-buy easier. It's easier to not buy stuff when you don't want stuff, or when you're appreciating the stuff that you already own. In addition, no-buys vilify basically all shopping, or I feel like, reinforce this idea that all shopping is bad, all shopping is a problem, and doesn't teach you to shop in a way that is healthy for you, that will be successful, that will lead you to a content life. And so for me, I learned my biggest lessons, not in my no-buy year, but year and a half time, where I started to really think about, okay, what are my habits? What do they look like? Why do I shop? What are my triggers? And also, when you address your habits, it makes the solutions way easier, because you can think about, all right, why do I shop the way that I do? What triggers me to spend money? Once you realize, okay, these things are my triggers, then you can address them one by one, and you can come up with solutions for each specific trigger that you have. For me, I was like a makeup and clothes person. Those were like the two main areas that I needed to find contentment with my stuff. And with this dual lens of habit and contentment, I was able to say, all right, how do I appreciate my clothes? Here are some solutions. I'm going to try capsule wardrobe. I'm going to create looks that are based off of pieces of media and art. I'm going to take photos of myself in these outfits. I'm going to try different 30-day challenges. I'm going to journal about what clothes I love the most. I'm going to go in and touch and feel my clothes. I'm going to you can come up with these solutions, and then you can use them. And if they're not working, then you iterate. And there are some mindset shifts that have to happen in there too, that you have to work on slowly. You have to buy into the idea that you're now going to buy stuff to use it to completion, or to own it for many years, or wear it many times, 100 times, 200 times, whatever. So I decided that I was primarily going to buy clothes that I was going to wear and own for years. And deciding on that helped me consider other questions. Okay, so how long would I ideally like to own things? How many times could I wear something and feel like I'm owning it for an appropriate amount of time? How much is enough? How many pieces of clothing is going to be enough for me? Why don't I appreciate my clothes now? What can I do to appreciate them more? And so when I get to look back over the past handful of years, I would say that my shopping habits as of December 2022 were I don't know, 8 out of 10. I still had one kind of bad habit that I was working on, that they were pretty good. And as long as there was no crazy situation happening, that I would be good 99% of the time. Emotional spending, or shopping as a coping mechanism, was that last 1% that I addressed this year. I feel like we need a little update on that. I have spent a total of $0 in emotional shopping this year. 0. Which to me is an incredible feat, and something I'm so I feel more proud of that than I do of completing my no-buy year. I feel it's such an accomplishment, and I actually have a video coming, I think next week, where I talk about how I did that, and I have an entire strategy that I'm sharing, a step-by-step strategy. I just finished the script for it. Step-by-step strategy on how to do it. We're going to talk about the emotional shopping / coping in that video, because it needs its own thing. It's a big enough thing. So this year, I have, in terms of makeup, I've bought replacements only less than $200 worth of makeup. I bought two for fun purchases, and they're both like lip products. That was recently at the end of the year, and bonus points, I use points and stuff to get them. So like I didn't really even spend my money on them, which is great. In terms of clothes, I spent a little bit more than $200 this year on clothes. I replaced some t-shirts this year. I replaced some sweaters this year. I did get a couple of things that were bought with gift cards that weren't replacements. Again, didn't spend my own money. I had to replace some shoes. It's under $1,000, 100%. I still have some last calculations to do. I did buy some things in like October and November that like haven't been tabulated into the budget. The biggest difference for how I spend my money now on clothes in 2023 versus 2019, I have a budget now. Number one, that I can feasibly stick to. And number two, they're all considered. I have not purchased any piece of clothing on a whim. Like I don't do that anymore. I'm able to put time and space and to consider things. I bought some jeans this year and I sat on that for like a good 40 days. And the whole reason why I bought jeans when I did, I wasn't going to buy any until November, was because my jeans were giving me a rash. So I'm like, yeah, we can replace them. And I felt like good with that. When it comes to like deciding how you want to spend your money, the way to be intentional about deciding how you want to spend your money is to come up with like a literal criteria of, all right, what makes a good purchase for me? What would make me feel good about spending my money? What are the criteria that should be met? And things should be different depending on the items that you're going to buy. If you're going to buy clothes, as an example, you can't use that thing up to completion. So in what circumstance would owning that thing feel like it was worth the money or like you owned it for an appropriate amount of time? Is it a cost per wear thing? Is it wearing it across specific seasons? Developing your own criteria for what qualifies a good purchase to you is incredibly important, I think, especially at the beginning, to like help you determine what's going to be worth your money and what's going to feel good, to spend your money on. If you're somebody who is in the process of changing your habits or you're about to, I would like to encourage you to keep going and to remind you that changing your habits takes time. It's supposed to take time. And if you think about it, like it takes us years for our habits to get to where they are, to be as strong and solidified as they are, that to dismantle 30%, 40% in a year is kind of amazing. To dismantle any of your habits, to put ones in that are ones you can be proud of, it's an amazing, amazing thing that you should be wildly proud of, that you're even deciding to do it. I do want to say that like it is entirely possible for you to change your habits. It's just going to take time. I think about where I was shopping away all of my money, going to stuff as an outlet to feel any semblance of like happiness in my life. That person, she's left the building. I don't get happiness from stuff anymore. I get happiness from me, from my life, from the people I choose to surround myself with. And I'm actively building the life that I want every single day. Addressing my shopping habits like did boost my self-esteem and how I feel about myself, because that was a really big reason why I felt garbage about things, because I was making choices that I knew weren't great. Changing my shopping habits gave me the confidence to change other areas as well. But once you build that in with contentment, it also kind of amplifies that, right? Like I'm finding contentment with my stuff and I'm happier. And it's like, okay, well, I want to apply this to other areas too. I want to feel this way about other areas too. And it has this domino effect that has been really powerful. And making good choices and choices that I'm proud of and finding contentment has spread far beyond my shopping. that's going to be everything from me today. I hope that if you're in the process of changing your habits or you're thinking about it, I hope that this video makes you feel less alone and inspires you to start or keep going. As I mentioned, I am going to be bringing a video on like coping shopping and emotional shopping, which will be coming next week. So look out for that. And there's some other great content coming next week too. Thanks for watching and hanging out. I'd love it if you would subscribe to catch more content like this. And I hope to see you again around here soon. Bye.